welcome back for another episode of Chasing Ghosts. This is the video series where I talk about those hard to find, those impossible to find, those really tough comic books that just don't show up every time you go to the store and go looking for them. Sometimes you got to do a little bit of research, get lucky, and be patient in tracking some of these bad boys down because, like I said, they're just not the easiest to find books. Hopefully you're enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure you like, you subscribe, you hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing the channel. Check out our Discord as we're still growing that thing out. And if you haven't given Whatnot a try, now's your chance for you first-time users. Get yourself a free $15 on me to buy whatever you want from whomever you want. No strings attached. First-time users, you get 15 bucks on me. Not only will you help the channel, but you get yourself something free in the meantime. Now, with that all said, I'm going back to a topic we hit on a few episodes ago. Got a little bit of a follow-up. They may not be my favorite things in the world, but a lot of you do like these incentives on second prints, etc. So we're going to talk about a few more of them. So if you want to see which ones I got in store for you this week, just hang on for a few seconds after the intro, and I will be right back. So, as I mentioned, I may not personally be a fan of these incentives on later printings because I just don't like the idea of it. That's all. It's that simple. I see second prints as reprints and as a means to get yourself a book you couldn't get the first time out. Maybe you don't want to pay the current price. Maybe you don't feel like chasing it. Maybe you just want to read it. That's how I view later prints. Granted, I also collect them, and I like the idea behind some new cover art on a lot of later prints, so I might be a little bit of a hypocrite in that way. But at the same time, I don't like the idea of incentivizing the second prints because then it just becomes what feels more and more like a money grab. But that's, again, a personal feeling. Feel free to do what you want with your own money. Not to say I don't have any of these because, in some cases, I just really want the cover art, and that's the only way to get it. But with that said, let's get right into this one because most of these are reusing art that we've seen before anyway. So with that said, this one was a viewer suggestion. I did have it on the list. I had been planning to do this one for a while because we've talked about some of the second prints and other things like that. So we might as well talk about the second print incentive for Tiger Division #1. So Tiger Division #1, this is an Art Germ cover. This is the second print 1 in 25 incentive. And yeah, it is a book that has a pretty cool cover. I mean, I like the cover. It's eye-grabbing. They used it on the first print, so there is another version out there. But this came out in December of 2022. And much like most of these, I'm not going to bother giving you those estimated print runs because they may not exist for most of these anyway. So we're not going to bother to even try. So best guess on how many may possibly be out there. It's really up to you to, try to use whatever sources you could find because what I usually use is Comic-Con, and that's not 100%, but it's the best tool we have. And for this time period, for most of these books, we don't have any estimated numbers because of the break between all of the different distributors, etc. So Penguin and Lunar and Diamond still rolling out there. It's damn near impossible to get even close to accurate guess on what some of the print runs might be. So we're not even going to bother. But we can look to see what is in the CGC census for a book like that. And there we do see there are 28 copies graded for this particular cover. We have 22 9/8s, 4 9/6s, we got a 9/4, and it looks like a 9/0 for all 28 of those books. Not a bad number. It's a decent amount for second print incentive, if you ask me. But with that, what does this thing go for? I was kind of curious. Again, all of these books, I selected them. I had them on my to-do list. I did not know the answers to any of these going in as to how many are out there, what's available, what they go for, if there's any available at all. No clue. I just come up with the list and then we take it as they come. Again, moment in time, snapshot in time. We do this same list of books in a month, could be a different result. That's just the honest truth of it. But for today, as I'm doing these on June 11th, what I found today is this 3 sales within the last 3 months for as cheap as $41 at auction for a raw copy to a 9.6 selling for about $100 and $150 for a 9.8 for this, again, gorgeous Luna Snow art germ cover. I like it. I think it's cool. I mean, yes, I'm a little over the little heart thing. I think it's a little bit overdone, but I get it. For a comic cover, fine. Available now. I didn't know how tough this one would be, but I'm not surprised that I did find 3. So when I went searching this morning, I did find 3. We did find a 9.6 that only wants $49, which doesn't seem too bad when you compare it against the $89 raw copy that 15 people are watching right now. Why they don't just jump and get that 9.6 for $50? I don't know. Like, if you really want this, why not go with that one? I would think. But $150 still seems to be the asking price on that 9.8. So that's a $100 difference. Do you want to take that gamble for $89 if that raw is going to get you a 9.8? Plus, you got to spend the grading fee and shipping fees there. You're going to spend up close to $150 anyway on that $89 book. So I don't know. Choice is yours, though. Choice is yours. With that said, speaking of Tiger Division, I believe their first appearance was actually in an issue of Taskmaster, which, funny as it is, has a second print incentive as well. So let's look at that. This is the black and white cover, second printing, 1 in 25 for Taskmaster number 3, which I believe is the first appearance of Tiger Division in comics. This is Valerio Giordano. Giordano. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I might be missing syllables and letters. I'm just doing my best here. Second print, 1 in 25, March of 2021. This is just a black and white version of a regular release cover. Don't know what the print run might be, which is why we're going straight to the CGC census to show there are a whopping 52 for this one. I say whopping because it's double what our last book was. So by comparison, there's a bit more. 45 9.8, 6 9.6s, and a 9.4 if you're out there looking. Prices on this. Well, this one sold 3 copies within the last, actually more than 3 copies. I believe this is just the snapshot bit that I took. There could be more as far as sales go. I just try to gather a nice little representation of what the book goes for. And you can see, it can go for $20. Cheap as $20 raw. $25. So this one doesn't seem to be commanding that much of a premium, despite the fact that it's the first appearance of this Tiger Division team in a second print incentive. Because, well, personally, again, I don't think a second print is a first appearance anymore. It's a reprint of their first appearance, but a reprint nonetheless. Again, that's how I look at it. You can view it differently. We can argue all day on what these things are or how they should be considered. But the point is, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You buy what you like. I buy what I like. And we can all look at the market and see what the market's doing together. Because if you wanted to buy one of these, you could. Because I found plenty of these out there. There were copies all over the place, though, as far as pricing goes. Because I couldn't even get the cheapest copies. Because I do believe I saw like $30 copies out there either. It just would have been a pain to get a nice little snip. So the snip that I have shows 9.8s at $275 to $300, while many raws are looking for $40 to $50. But like I said, there were some cheaper copies out there as well. Not like a ton, but I did see, like I said, at least one $30 copy out there. So if you really wanted one of these, you can find it, is all I'm trying to get to for this particular book. And as I've said before, normally the black and white version of the covers is just a lazy go-to for a lot of these second prints in general, let alone the incentives. I just not a fan. Just not a fan if they just go with a black and white version. Not all art needs to be done like this with the black and white. Some of it works. Certain artists, I like to see their black and white in their sketches. Jim Lee, Dan Panosian, Frank Joe. There's a handful of others, but most, it just seems unfinished. And this one, I know what the regular cover looks like. And just looking at this just seems meh, unfinished to me. With that said, I got some more black and whites for you. Unfortunately, that's how they decided to do these. Again, not my choice, but these are how these covers were produced. And our first one is going into the current volume of Wolverine. Yes, Wolverine Deadpool's coming out in a couple of months. Can't wait for that movie. But in the meantime, we just finished up Sabertooth War. Let's go back to the beginning of this run. Benjamin Percy still writing this, or started this off, has been going this solid run for Wolverine has been going on for a bunch of issues now. I mean, we would just pass what, 50? So issue 1, going back to 2020, there is a second print. There is a second print, 1 in 25, which is this book, which is a black and white version of the cover A on this one. And I believe there's also some other color variations on that cover as well from some other exclusives of some kind. But the black and white one, that's the second print incentive for March again of 2020. I probably could have got print runs, but I didn't bother because we weren't getting it for everybody. So why get it for this one? But I did get the CGC census, which is only 40 copies on this one. 24 9/8s, 9 9/6s, 6 9/4s, and it looks like a single 9/2. Decent variety there. Copy selling, well, not the most expensive, but not the cheapest either. A little uneven again, as we're seeing a 9.4 is only $60. A 9.6 at auction was $65. Meanwhile, a raw, $90. More than enough copies if you wanted to buy one, though. I'm not going to try to tease this one out. More than just these 4. Actually, not a ton more. I think it was only like 1 or 2 more that could have fit, but I'm just showing you these 4. We're looking at 9.6 looking for $375, a raw looking for $250, 9.4 CGC signature series $300, 9.6 signature series looking for $400 plus. Man, these prices are way different than what actually sold, right? I don't know. Got some big appetites here on these prices, but what the market's willing to take is only like $60. Just saying. You all might need to meet somewhere in the middle here. With that said, let's continue on this Wolverine run, because not right away, but later on, much later on in the run, we're getting a lot of different characters being introduced. First one being Hellverine. You guys know Hellverine. Recent new #1 just came out. We know they kind of pivoted things around a bit, but Hellverine was first introduced during this crossover with Ghost Rider in issue 36, and they decided to do a black and white cover of the B cover. Why they didn't use the popular cover that everybody seems to love, the cover A, who knows? But they gave us this one. So issue 36, a Lionel Francis U cover, is the second print 1 in 25 incentive from this book from October of 2023. Decent amount of copies in the census. Not a ton still, with only 31, but 26 9/8s, 3 9/6s, a 9.4, and it looks like a 9.0. Not too bad. Again, this is a pretty popular character for all the fun that we made of this character when it was coming out and this book getting hot. It's Hellverine's kind of hung around, and we're still seeing sales of this book. Again, I still don't love these second prints and second print incentives selling like this, but hey, it is what it is. And what they sell for is about this. A bunch of sales here. Raw copies, about $100. CGC 9/8s, about $300. It's a bit more than I'm willing to spend on something like this, but that's what the market seems to be willing to bear. Asking prices, well, there are a few out there if you want them. Not hard, not impossible to find, unfortunately. For our purposes here, I'm looking for ghosts, but this one's doesn't appear to be a ghost, because you can get those $100 raws and you can get $365 on a 9.8. Or at least I'm saying that's what they're asking for. If you want to spend it, you can spend it here. So it's all just a matter of what you're willing to spend. Now, the next issue was a big return for Greg Capullo to Marvel. They even did a little secret release book. That was cool. But what is not so cool, they decided to do a second print on that book. Not only that, they decided to reuse that art and just give us a black and white version of it. And I got to admit, this black and white version looks bland as shit. It's just Look how empty it is. And you put the last mutant standing bit there in the middle. It looks like just somebody just wrote in there with a marker, like it was just a side note. This just looks unfinished to me. Just looks undone. But people like them. People like it. Greg Capullo, also from the same October 2023. They were really pumping these books out pretty quickly at that time for Wolverine. But second print, 1 in 25. Well, we got only a couple in the census for this one. We've got 6 with 498s and 296s for the second print Capullo sketch cover. So maybe not as easy to find as, say, the first printing of it or the last book, but yeah, it is what it is. Also, people still willing to shell out a few bucks. 80 to 100 bucks raw, as a matter of fact, for this one. You wanted to go shopping for one? Not a lot of options, but I did manage to spot 2. So, not a lot, but I found 2, and both want about 150 bucks raw. So, it ain't cheap. But you also remember, we've seen this. I've been doing the Hot 10 almost a year now, and we've seen some of these second print incentives pop up. But by and large, when they come out, there's only a handful of sales, and I mean handful, like a half dozen sales. Sometimes they're doing like double ratio. They start at like double ratio, so they're starting like 50 bucks, sometimes hitting 80. At this time, they were doing a bit more, like they're coming out pretty hot out of the gate, like hitting that $80, $90 mark, and then just kind of lingering. So is that 150 a price that people actually are willing to pay for this, or is that just lingering prior heat? They're just still hoping to get those old prices. As we saw, people did pay 80 and 100, but 150 might be a stretch too far, which is why they might still be sitting there available and not sold. But with that said, Capullo wasn't done here. He did do another Wolverine cover, and they decided to do another second print incentive variant and just making it a lazy-ass black and white cover. And that was on issue 41, which kicked off Sabertooth War, which we finally just saw end just recently. Again, I say finally because that thing just seemed to drag. It just seemed to take too long to me. Just too many parts. We didn't need a 10-part storyline there. There was just too much. But here we go. And I say black and white, but there's a hint of color. As you can see, a little bit of red there on the bloody claws. So there is a little bit of a Schindler's List thing going on here with the red. But issue 41, don't know the print runs, but I will probably guess that there were a lot because of store exclusive on this. It was the start of this huge storyline that was playing out in Wolverine. So I imagine there's probably a good number of these, even in the second print version, February 2024. But in the census, there's still only 6, just like the last book. When these 6 are all 9/8, though. But like I said, I still think there's plenty out there. Found a decent number sold. Here's a little snapshot of what's sold, and they're getting 80 to 100. Even the last, well, actually, I shouldn't say the last one. This seemed to have peaked at $113 raw back in March, and it's kind of settled in now, more around that $80 to $100 kind of price range. All raw. Again, there's only 6 graded, so the 2 copies that were available that I found, just like the last book, I found 2, but still 2. 120 and 150 bucks raw. That 120 is at auction, and it's ending tomorrow. So we'll see if that one sells. So again, if I'd have waited and done this list tomorrow and that auction was over, we might have seen only 1 copy, and we might have been calling this one a ghost. But for today, this snapshot, we can't do that. Now, let's move on to our next book, which we are doing one more Wolverine book, but not a part of this run because there weren't any more second print incentives to talk about. So we're going to a different title, which is Predator versus Wolverine #1. This Steve McNiven cover. Pretty awesome. And it was awesome cover the first time around, and then they just made it a virgin. And yeah, made it a second print incentive. It's better than making it black and white, but it's still just reused art. And my problem when they do that is we get situations like this. This, with the trade dress, is a pretty cool cover. Without the trade dress, it seems that they're all squished at the bottom of the page with a lot of blue sky above them. That is filled with trade dress, which balances the image out. To me, here looks uneven. Again, this is aesthetically not as pleasing to me. But It is pleasing enough for 17 people to get this graded, and a dozen of them are 9.8s, two 9.6s, a 9.4, all the way down to an 8.5 and an 8.0. Man, I guess somebody seriously overgraded what they thought they had when they mailed this in, or CGC screwed somebody and gave them an 8.0 and an 8.5. For whatever reason, I'm pairing those things together because those two are oddballs to me. You just don't see that often on new releases like this. But it is what it is. Also, it is what it is as far as pricing goes, as pricing can be as low as $50 raw to as high as $200. Granted, that looks like that one's signed, so that kind of plays into it a little bit differently. Signatures, that's why I don't like playing the signature game. It's a different animal. You can't do apples to apples when you're talking signatures. How much of that price is because of the book? How much of that price is because of the signature? How much of it is the price of the combo, the two things put together? It's impossible to tell. So, if we exclude that $200 one, we're looking at 50 to 70 on this 1 in 25. And with the plenty available out there, 70 is a price that you can get one for. It still has 10 watchers. Meanwhile, somebody else wants a whopping 170 for a raw. And then gradeds, well, somebody wants 350 for their 9.8 straight up. And then somebody else has one at auction with still a bunch of days left. Won't end until Sunday. Right now, it's only at 76, but I imagine it'll end up higher than that when it's all said and done for that 9.8. Where that ceiling is, I don't know. But I imagine it'll cross $100. But we'll see how high it goes. That said, more than enough for you if you want to shop for that one. All right, I think I've done enough Wolverine and Marvel for right now. So let's pivot and try to give the other publishers a little bit of love. Let's go over to DC for a minute. Now, the first one I'm going over to DC is also going to be an oddball book. This is a prestige, oversized black label book that they decided to do a second print, 1 in 25 foil cover for, and that is Swamp Thing Green Hell #1. Pretty cool book, pretty cool Christian Ward cover. I don't know if we really needed it in foil and we really needed an incentive second print, but we got it nonetheless. I don't even know if the first issue sold that well to even warrant the second print, let alone a second print that's going to be incentivized. But I guess it did. With that said, this book in the census has only 6 copies, and only 2 of them are 9.8s, while 4 of them are 9.6s. For a square-bound, prestige-sized book, those 9.6s are kind of curious to me, but when you see that 3 out of the 4 are signature series, perhaps there was a little bit of rough handling as they were getting signed. Who knows? But 3 out of those, actually 4 out of the total 6 are all signed copies of this book, so keep that in mind as well. What's the market willing to pay for this book? I don't know. We've had none sold in the last 3 months, which I kind of found surprising. None. But if you wanted to buy one, I did find you 2. So we have a pair out there, both raw, one looking for $50, one looking for 95. Seems about right, I guess, for an ask for an oddball book like this to me. But it is what it is. But they're still just sitting there. 1 in 25 foil. I don't know. All right. With that, let's move on. Go to a normal size, regular size comic book, and we're going to go over to Superman. Superman, Son of Kal-El #1. Now, this book got a lot of interest in it because of the kiss, which we will get to in a second. We will see that on another cover, not this particular cover, because this is the second print for the #1. This is the John Timms cover, July 2021, 1 in 25, second print. This one has only 11 in the census, 10 9.8s, a single 9.6. I found one that sold, and it sold for $100 in 9.8. And then when I went to look to see if there were any others, I came up empty. None. I was surprised. But maybe I shouldn't have been. Maybe they just kind of rushed through this printing and didn't actually do that many because they knew that DC in their back pockets had this one coming, which is the third print for this same book. And again, the draw for the book, what the heat magnet was at the time, you know, controversy because how could they do this? I mean, it's just two characters kissing. But be that as it may, they decided this was big enough to make not only a third print for this book, but a third print 1 in 50. 1 in 50. Yeah. See, this is, again, cash grab to me. So, third print 1 in 50, and they sold a bunch of these. Look at this. There's 61 in the census. This is the most of all the books we've done today. 61 in the, not to say that 61's a ton. Let's just get that straight, too. But out of the books we've talked about so far, this is the most. 61 in the census today, 49 eights, 13 9 sixes, and then a bunch of others rounding that out. Only found a pair of sales on this book, and they aren't cheap. A raw, $500. A 9.8 best offer on $800. Sorry, I didn't go digging to find the accepted price. It doesn't matter. Well, it's a lot of money. That's the whole point. That we can just put it at that. It's a lot of money for this book. And if you wanted one at these prices, you would think, man, this is gonna be ghosty, right? I mean, the second print 1 in 25, there was none. So, how was a third print 1 in 50 going to be? Well, there are a lot actually. Well, I mean, a ton, but there is more than enough. Granted, these books all want more than enough as far as prices go, which is probably why they're still there, because not everybody can be shelling out $400 to $500 raw or $1,300 raw. I mean, seriously, $1,333.31. 21 watchers. Those are probably just looky-loos just wanting to see if somebody will actually pay that price for this book, not actually people considering paying that price for that book. It happens. Also, just not a fan of how the sellers also have it listed. I think that's a little crass, but hey, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can zoom in and go see it for yourself. With that said, a 9.8, $1,500 they're asking. It's a lot of money. A lot of money for this book. And it's a third print. Third print 1 in 50. Still just a third print. I don't know. It's not my money. All right. With that, let's leave DC alone for a minute. I've got two independent books for you. I believe these are both Boom books, actually, because I think Boom did this Mega Man Fully Charged, right? I could be wrong with that. But Mega Man Fully Charged. The most semi-recent Mega Man run that we've had, I guess, or I shouldn't say semi. Well, semi-recent is that was in 2020, but I think this is the most recent that we've had. It sold well enough for them to have multiple covers, including a second print and a second print incentive. That was a 1 in 25 on September of 2020. Stefano Simeone, I don't know how to say it. I'll admit it. I don't know how to pronounce it. But I can also tell you that nobody decided to grade this book either because the CGC census was bare on it. Again, Mega Man, second print incentive. I don't know how many are out there. I found a sale, $45. That was okay. And there was 10% off the $50 ask. So it got discounted over time. And that was way back in March. And then a couple of copies listed. 65, about 60, and $100 raw for this one. Yeah, I like Mega Man personally, so I'll take a look for this one. See if we can find a better price than that. Just because I like Mega Man, not because I like collecting second print incentives. But with that said, one more book for us to go over. I wish I would have gotten into reading these because I seriously do love the current film series with Dune. So I really probably should have been reading these comics. Maybe I'll go back one of these days and check them out. Let me know in the comments down below if these are worth reading. But Dune, House Atreides, #1, sold well enough for them to not only do the second print, but a second print 1 in 25 virgin cover here from November 2020 by Evan Cagle. In the census, I found two. There's a 9.8 and a 9.6. So not a ton. But 1 in 1 sold copies. Well, I found 2 raw sales, both at my comic shop, $41. I mean, that's the kind of thing, like, only people who are going to have, like, copies of this book are those bigger online retailers or bigger stores. So my comic shop, your midtowns, etc. Those are the ones I would only expect to be ordering enough to even get any copies of this. So those are probably just copies that were just sitting there for a while. One sold in April, one just sold in June. So June 3rd there. Huh. But I could also be wrong as far as saying only online retailers have it because, well, there were some out there. More than just these four, but I did find more than enough if you wanted to go shopping for one, including my comic shop, who still has copies for $41 if you're interested. But outside of that, there's another $40 raw and a couple of 60. Actually, I think that 6175 is the same listing. It just one's sponsored, and yeah, so sponsored listing, they'll sometimes show up twice, but it's the same actual listing. So it's still more than just this if you wanted to find this book. So, with that said, this was an interesting exercise. Like I said, I didn't know what the answers were going to be going in. I didn't have the answers to the test before we started taking it. But the pile of books that I covered today, a dozen, if you will, most of them were hard to find. And I'm going to show you 10 here because it just balanced and it fit the screen pretty well. But I left off the Swamp Thing Green Hell cover because not only did it come up as an odd number, it's also an odd size. So I left it off. But that one is also hard to find because the only one for this week's list that we can give the ghost tag to is that second print, 1 in 25, Superman Son of Kal-El #1, because there were none available right now. That isn't to say they're not out there. It's just right now in this moment in time when I went looking, there were none to be had. So for this week, we're calling that book a ghost. And with that all said, I'd like to thank you all for stopping by and checking this out. Hopefully you found that interesting. Hopefully you find this series still entertaining. I mean, after 118, I think this is episode 118, that's a lot of comics that I've talked about. So the pile of books to cover that we can call, ghosts and impossible find gets smaller and smaller without redoing books. I mean, we can go back and redo some just to see what they're looking like now, but I don't really want to do that. So just looking for different angles, any suggestions of things you want to see? Because again, I don't know the answers. I only recently started to dip into these incentive second prints. I recently dipped into the DC foils that they did for a while. Any little weird, unique niche of pile of books that you think might be kind of tough, let me know. And we'll take a look together because that's kind of what this is. Like I said, I'm curious about this stuff. So this whole show is based around me being curious and looking in anyway and just sharing what I find with all of you. So with that all said, hope you're still enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Take a look at all those links I mentioned down below, from memberships to the channel, the whatnot link. Join us on Discord to hang out and come chatting with us. Help us keep the lights on by supporting us with those memberships and those whatnot signups. And with that all said, I'll see you all later with some more content. All right.